My name is Rachel Rofe. I created the show because I wanted to help you see that if you have a choice, you can choose a better life. If you're listening to this podcast, you're in a pretty fortunate position. You have free will, ability to connect to the internet, and access to all kinds of new education. This podcast is meant to help you make the most of your good fortune. We talk with all kinds of people here from all walks of life because I want you to see that no matter what your situation, there's always a way to create a life that you're proud of. Hello! In today's show, we are talking with Kathleen Gage. Kathleen is somebody who has a crazy thriving business. She shares later on in the interview about how she had a couple small masterminds that generated over $100,000 and $200,000. She does a ton of speaking. She has information products, all kinds of great business stuff. More importantly, just a really phenomenal person. She's all about serving people. And so in this podcast interview, we talk about a couple different things. We talk about how she went from, because years ago she was actually homeless, so we went from how she went from homeless to where she is now. I asked her different questions about that. I asked her about her daily habits that she does to just stay in a great frame of mind and different things about how she worked her way up. We touch on how she structures her day now. So I asked her what a typical day looks like for her. She has specific things she does to make sure she's bringing in revenue. So we went over that. And then I asked her some random questions at the end about getting paid to speak. And then also, if you can have a successful business without making sacrifices. Kathleen, thank you so much for being here.
Rachel, it is great to be here.
Awesome. So the intention behind A Better Life is to show people that if they have a choice, they can choose a better life. So in this spirit, can you take a minute to share with us some of the things that you're most proud of in your life?
Ooh, that's a pretty loaded question. And I would say the first thing that comes to mind as far as what I'm most proud of is I was able to set my business up in a way that when my mother got very ill and the 2 years before she passed on, I was one of her primary caretakers, and my business kept growing during that time, even though I was taking a lot of time out of the business. I had set it up with a great team of people who just kept things going, and I was able to really serve at a very high level. And I have to say, looking back, I have no regrets about the last few years I spent with both my mom and dad.
That's a really good one. I didn't know where you were going to, obviously I didn't know how you were going to answer, but I remember reading about how you were saying when your mom was really sick, you were just a product creation machine. You saw her a ton, but
I was.
That's amazing. Can you actually just share how you were able to do that when you were having so much disaster going on around you?
Absolutely. A lot of it was, as I mentioned, having a good team in place. They were able to keep things going when I wasn't emotionally or physically present, because if anybody's ever gone through the loss of a parent, a spouse, a child, it's a whole different experience that until you go through it, you just don't realize how taxing it can really be on you. And really, many of the products that I created during that time were by my mother's hospital bedside, and it required an extreme amount of trust. Every day I would pray and I'd say, God, please just guide me in this. Give me the strength to do what I need to do today, and most of all, just be there for my mom. But during the time that she would either be asleep or there were periods that she literally was unconscious. She had many surgeries during the last 2 years of her life. And during that time, I would really take advantage of sitting there and doing downloads. It was like I just download after download and capturing this information and then putting it into a usable format that I started selling. And one of the programs that I actually started creating right before my father passed, he had a very short period of time from when he was diagnosed to when he passed. I started creating a continuity program. It was a $27 a month continuity program, and in the first few months we generated over $100,000 for the coming year, because we had a lot of people who signed up for it. I think energetically that the universe was just supporting me in what I was doing, and it really took a big load off of me knowing that month after month I was going to have anywhere from $8,000 to $10,000 consistently coming in for something that I only had to create once, and it would just be replicated out in the marketplace.
Wow. And, just in your answer, you kind of highlighted my two favorite things about you, which is that you're very spiritual, but you're also very practical. And I think, yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really phenomenal combination, because I know how either one to the extreme can just be, not so stellar.
And I've been on both sides of the equation. I've been very, very logical to the detriment of my spiritual side. And then there were periods in my life that, actually at the age of 30, which is 31 years ago, I hitchhiked to Israel. I was on my way to India, and I've never been good at geography because I ended up in Israel, and I stayed there for 6 months, and I was out searching for my guru. And what I found during that period of time was wherever I go, there I am, and my spiritual awakening is right where I reside in any given moment.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up your spiritual awakening. I wanted to ask you about that. Now, this was around, because I knew you were homeless for a little bit, right?
I was in my 20s.
So could you share how you were able to go from homeless to spiritual awakening and what that looked like for you?
I really believe that my spiritual awakening has been happening for the last nearly 61 years. I'll be 61 in May, and to celebrate my 61st birthday, I'm doing a marathon. I'm getting trained for it right now. And my spiritual awakening actually has come in waves, if you will, and there have been times that it came in real profound ways, but most of the time very subtle things, where maybe it was a book I read, or maybe it was a teacher I had who said something that really impacted me. And really one of my very first spiritual awakenings was when I was 9 years old. I had a death and dying experience. And back then there were no books about death and dying. When you tried to share that with somebody, they pretty much laughed at you and said, yeah, you were just imagining it because, you have a great imagination. And it took me many years to realize that I wasn't alone in that experience. There were millions of people who had that kind of experience. But because it was invalidated, I actually kept a lot of my spiritual stuff to myself for many, many years and doubted who I was. And in my teens and early 20s, I made some really poor choices that my choice was I'd rather go out and party than go to work. And it got to the point that I couldn't get a job, and I actually ended up where I had no roof over my head. I was completely unemployable. And what's interesting is today I'm unemployable in a whole different way. I think I'm a little too creative now for anybody to ever hire me. And so the spiritual awakenings that I've had have come in many, many different forms, degrees, and with different people, sharing insights and information on what there is that maybe we can't see, touch, or feel. It's just a sense that we have. But now I spend a lot of time on developing my spiritual awareness. Not a day goes by that I don't write a gratitude list, or I don't pray, or I don't meditate. I put a lot of effort into being on a very conscious level in a state of mind that allows me to fully embrace the experience of life.
I'm curious, the gratitude list, do you feel like they long-term really support you? And I'm asking, I guess, because I've heard of some people who say that the gratitude list, for them, like it's helpful in the moment, but it doesn't carry them for the rest of the day. Do you find that it does?
That one, I have no question in my mind that the more I express what I have to be grateful for, the more I will have to be grateful for. It's often things that are intangible. It could be just the love that I feel from my animals. My partner and I, we do a lot of animal rescue. We have 3 dogs, 3 horses, and a cat. We had 2 cats until about a month ago, but one had to go to kitty heaven.
Oh.
And we have rescued most of those animals. And to me, it's like just the gratitude of knowing that I have the resources to make a home available for these animals that most likely were abused at one point. The gratitude for my health, the gratitude that I can see, the gratitude that I have the creativity I have, the gratitude for having a connection to source, the gratitude for the people in my life. That really started about 30 some odd years ago when I had a spiritual mentor who was working with me on my attitude, and she said, you need to really look at what you have to be grateful for. And I had just gotten off the streets, just gotten a studio apartment, and I didn't have very much money, and I could hardly afford to pay my bills. And I said, I don't have much to be grateful for at all. And she goes, do you have a roof over your head? I said, yes, but. And she said, do you have food in the refrigerator? I said, yes, but. And she goes, are you able to sleep in a bed? And I said, yes, but. And she said, the only but that you need is the one you sit on. You need to start being more grateful for what you have, because when you express that gratitude energetically, more good comes to you. And for me, my experience has been when I am in a state of gratitude, it's like things just magically open up. I have a higher level of appreciation. And it's all about the energy that we give and receive throughout our day.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I know for some people the list work. I've heard of some people who they say for them what works is just like really just proclaiming, I'm so grateful for this, with their arms wide open. and just really like emotionally. I think Tony Robbins teaches that, and I've heard some really great things about that too. But like however you do it, I absolutely agree that gratitude is just incredible. And that actually leads me to, I know you had mentioned that when you first started getting jobs, you said, I'm going to be the best, whatever job it is that you've ever had. Can you tell us about that?
It's interesting. That's a great question because what it brought up for me was when I interviewed for a job in broadcast media, sales and broadcast media. And when I was being interviewed by the sales manager, she goes, well, why should we hire you? She goes, you don't have much of a work history for quite a few years. And the jobs that you did have were not the most stellar jobs to have. And I looked at her and I said, if you hire me and when you hire me, I will be the best one you've ever had. I'm going to be the best that I can possibly be, give you 100%. And I was so committed to that within a very short period of time, I became their top salesperson. And actually that was something I learned through Tony Robbins. It was about really proclaiming what it is you believe to be true, but then stepping into it. And I think where a lot of people get misguided is they think all you have to do is the affirmations, but with the affirmations are the actions. And a great example is this marathon that I'm training for. I'm going to be 61 the week after I do the marathon. And I thought, what could I do that would really honor who I am and the path that I've been on in life? And I thought, why not a marathon? And I'm doing power walking. I'm not running, but I hired a coach, and I'm really putting a lot of effort into it. Now, I could not train leading up to the marathon. I could do the 26.2 miles on the day of the marathon and probably kill myself and really injure myself. Or I can proclaim, I'm definitely going to do the marathon with all I have in me. I'm going to do it. I'm going to go through the whole process. And leading up to it, I have to train, I have to condition, I have to eat right, I have to go out every day and do something that leads me to the end result. For example, over the weekend, I went and did 14 miles of power walking, and then this morning I did 5 miles, and each day I do something that builds up to it. So it's not just about proclaiming what we're going to do or who we are, but it's putting the action behind the proclamation.
Absolutely. First of all, good for you. That's incredible. I guess, okay, so I know people listening might be thinking, or even, like I know the marathon's something you're excited about, it's something you want to do. Now with this job that was completely new for you, and you haven't been having jobs for such a long time, how did you start to become the best? Like what was the action that you took?
Oh, that is such a great question. One of the things that I did is I read a lot of books. And another thing I did is I found somebody from a competing radio station, and I found the top salesperson from a competing radio station, and I got to know her, and I asked her, I said, what is it I need to do to be the best at my radio station? And we became friends, and she mentored me. And so I went to somebody who had already been there, done that, who was living that truth, and I asked them, what do I need to do? What's the strategy? And the thing that I know to be true in all the learnings that I've had is find somebody who's already succeeding at what you want to succeed at and ask them, what is your strategy for success? So I got a mentor. I read a lot of books, I went to seminars, and I completely immersed myself in the belief that I could do it. And I also put the time in. It didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen in a week. It took time, and it took commitment, and it took getting through the frustration, because there were days that I would go out knocking on doors and talking to potential clients, and I would get no after no after no after no. And I had to believe that somewhere in there, I was going to learn how to get more yeses. So it was also overcoming my own frustrations. It was also being willing to be rejected. When I learned that there were certain types of people that bought advertising compared to other types of people, then I would start asking more of the people who would buy advertising. So it was really looking at what were all the elements that I needed to put in place that would allow me to have more success. Those were a few of the things that I did.
Wow. And so when you just kept on saying, I know that I'm going to be able to get yeses. I know. You said affirmations were part of it, actions were part of it. Was there anything else that you told yourself? Because, that's hard to keep up that I'm going to get a yes, I'm going to get a yes.
Well, there were times, Rachel, that when I got a lot of no's, I would say, there it goes. That proves that, you don't deserve to have a good job. You don't deserve to have a good life. And it was that old chatter that would show up that ended me up on the street. Fortunately, by that point, I was listening enough and reading enough and watching enough on the affirmations and on changing my own self-talk that I would look at that and go, wait a minute, that's not who I have to be today. That's who I was in the past, and that's who created who I am today, but I don't have to be that way today. So it really is about managing your self-talk. And with the yeses, now I remember going to some sales training where they said, if somebody says no, what it really means is you haven't found a way for them to say yes yet. I don't agree with that. I think with some people, we should get a no from them. With some people, we're just not a match for them. And so the more I was able to define who my ideal client was, the better off I did. And also to really look at how I was there to serve them. It wasn't just about selling advertising. It wasn't just about voicing a commercial for them. It was truly looking at how could what I brought to the table help impact their bottom line in their business.
Beautiful, beautiful. You obviously you set a ton of goals, even just in that job, and then I know just where you are now, I've listened to your podcast about setting goals, and you talked about how writing down goals has been super helpful for you. I'm curious, how do you choose goals to go after?
Oh, what a great question. Boy, you're coming up with some really, really valuable questions that are eliciting great information. One is I look at my long-term vision for my life. Where do I want to be when all is said and done? What's the legacy I want to leave? And based on that, what are the things that I would need to accomplish in order to leave that kind of legacy? And one of my big passions right now, one of my big missions right now is for older women to realize that we don't have to be old like our mothers were or our grandmothers were. We can actually be very vibrant after our 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. I have some friends that are in their 80s, and they're amazing, amazing people. And so part of where I set my goals is based on what is the message I want to put out to my market, what's the legacy I want to leave, and based on that, what am I willing to do to accomplish that? And that's where the foundation of my goals are. One of my primary purposes in life is, as I mentioned, to rescue animals. And if I can't take any more into my home and my property, then I can donate to organizations. So some of the goals that I set are financial goals within my business that will allow me to write checks to organizations that I support.
How did you come up with the idea that you want part of your message was for, the first part that you mentioned, helping older women realize they don't have to be their parents?
When I saw the way my mother died, quite seriously, when I spent a lot of time in hospitals and I saw what was happening to people when they gave up, basically, because in many ways my mother did give up, and she really missed my father. They had been married nearly 61 years. And there was this fear of letting go completely to pass on and the fear of not being able to let go. And I saw what it did to her, and it really impacted me. When I was in my 20s and I was out there running and gunning and doing all the things I was doing, I didn't take care of myself. I didn't take care of this body that I know truly is a vessel to carry the soul that I have out into the world. And if I take care of it to the best of my ability, let the chips fall where they may. But if I don't take care of it, life's going to give me some experiences that maybe I don't want. So it's really about just having this vibrancy and this energy that in many ways I can be a role model for other women and let them know that no matter how old you are, you don't have to live a life that doesn't have a lot of juice and passion.
Beautiful. And I don't want to drill into this too much, but I'm just curious because I know one of our podcasts, our most popular podcast, was about how to know your purpose. And so I'm just curious, when you were going through all this with your mother, did you just have this, is it like a feeling for you, this is what you're meant to be doing?
There were days that I have to say it was hard to get out of bed. There were days that I just wanted to pull the covers over my head and just say, please make it all go away. And yet I knew on a higher level that my mom wasn't going to be around for long, and my choice was day by day, sometimes hour by hour, minute by minute, second by second, I could make a choice of how to create an experience that was the ultimate experience that I could have as my mother was actually dying. And so it wasn't like it came in some big wave of oh, here's your purpose. It was every day I had a choice of honoring what had been put in front of me. And I heard something recently that really, it just struck me in such a profound way. Instead of asking what is our purpose, ask who is our purpose. And when we move into the who is our purpose, many, many answers will come to us of, maybe it's the elderly person down the street who needs someone to go to the grocery store. A lot of times we tend to think that our purpose should be so magnificent and so large and so visual and one that everybody's going to notice. And sometimes our purpose is simply to help somebody at the grocery store that might need a hand up and they don't have enough money to pay for their groceries, and silently paying for their groceries and not announcing it to everybody, but to do things that truly are coming from a place of love and service.
Absolutely. And you said something that fascinated me, which is that you feel like people need to let go of the need to be well known and just focus on serving people. Can you say more about that?
Absolutely. And it's interesting because after I went through my whole period of feeling like I had no worth and I started getting my life together, it was like I wanted to be recognized for a lot of what I did, and I wanted to get every award I could get, every recognition, and I got a lot of them. I had a whole closet full of trophies and awards and recognitions. And I realized that wasn't filling that empty hole inside. What was filling it was when I was in service. And it's so interesting because if we just show up and do what's in front of us and do what we're being called to do, we'll get all the visibility we need. Now, there are things that we can do that help to move our message along if we're truly looking at a movement that we're involved with. A friend of mine, Sam Crowley, he and his wife had a baby about 6 months ago who was a pound when she was born, and she's still in the hospital. Sam was talking about how he and his wife would pray that baby Susan would have just one more breath. That's all they asked for. And that was 6 months ago, and every day she has one more breath. Well, he has started a movement where he's actually going to do a Kickstarter fund to raise money, one, to pay off the hospital bill, which is about $1,200,000 right now. He's going to write a book and work with other parents of premature babies, and he's using social media to get the message out. He didn't start out a year ago saying, when my baby is born, this is what my movement's going to be. He took what life gave him, and he said, it is our responsibility as parents to be very positive around our baby because she depends on us for that. We cannot be negative. We cannot say, why did this happen? We have to say, thank you, God, for the blessings you've given us, and do the most that we can with that. That's his movement. Now, he can use social media to get the visibility around that, but it's not like he started out saying, I need to go out and get a whole bunch of visibility around this tragedy that happened to our family. And he turned that tragedy into a situation that is going to bless a lot of people.
Beautiful. So I guess there's a little bit of a paradox between putting what's in front of you, dealing with whatever's in front of you, but then also making your goals and making the big goals to work towards, huh?
Absolutely. And sometimes, if we did everything that was in front of us, we'd never get anything done. And so it's really looking at how we can manage our time, manage our energy, and bring in the resources that will allow us to do more of what we're here to do. And initially when people start businesses, they do a lot of the work themselves, but what they soon discover is if they try to do everything and learn everything and be everything, that they're really a bottleneck for the growth of their business. And so it's really looking at, okay, what are the main things you should be doing, and then bringing in the support to help you to free up your time so you can do more of what you're here to do, and you're blessing people by giving them work. See, that's the interesting thing when I talk to entrepreneurs and they say, I really can't afford to hire a virtual assistant. And in many cases, you can't afford not to, and to think in terms of, it's not about how much I'm spending on this person. One, I'm investing, and I'm also blessing them with more abundance in their life.
I love that. Awesome. So we're transitioning more into business, which is perfect timing. I actually wanted to talk about this the second half of our conversation. So thanks for that, making it easy. So people can get a good feel. I know you do speaking and mentoring, and you have products and services. How do you currently make the bulk of your income? Is there an 80-20 rule, or is it like equal with everything that I just mentioned?
That is a really, really good question, because when my mother was ill, nearly 100% of my revenue came from product development and doing online campaigns, because I really had to pull back from going out and doing public appearances and speaking engagements. And then I went through a transition where I actually hired a very, very high-powered coach who she is known for putting on events, and she is known for actually generating several $1 million from her events. And I hired her to get me back into the mindset of getting out and doing speaking engagements. And quite seriously, in some ways, I had lost my mojo. It was just like going through that whole experience when it was all said and done. For the next year, I was in some ways very lost. It was like, wow, this was a really difficult period in my life. And I didn't even realize how much I had gone through. And so I hired this coach, and she really worked with me on putting speaking back into my revenue mix. And then it got to the point where about 80% of my revenues came from the speaking engagements and then making offers at the speaking engagements for 6-month programs and year-long programs. And over the last few months, I've been getting a balance of bringing product development back into the mix because I kind of let that go by the wayside for a while. And so now I'm moving towards a 50-50 mix.
Do you have a preference of one over the other?
Well, no, I don't. As long as my information can get in the hands of the right people. And what's really nice is when you have multiple streams of revenue, you're in a position to be able to say no to those people who are not a good fit for you, nor are you a good fit for them. Because I tend to have a very direct style with my clients, and I'll cut through the fluff very quickly. I was going to say the BS, but I'll say the fluff. I cut through that very quickly, and I really get to the heart of what needs to happen, and I help them to see where their fear is showing up. I help them to see where they're holding themselves back, and that by playing small, it doesn't serve them or anybody else. And so with the clients I work with, I absolutely love the conversations we have. I really love them in a very, very deep way because I know that they're making a difference in the world. So I love that, but then I love when I create a new product and it's serving people who may not be in a position to come one-on-one with me, but they still appreciate that information. So I could take one or the other, but I think the combination of the two makes me a more well-rounded entrepreneur.
Absolutely, and I love your point about when you have multiple streams of income, you can be a bit more choosy and only choose things that are going to light you up anyway. So I guess it makes sense that you like both of them equally because, of course, you're going to pick only the things you love. You're in that position to do so.
And I've had my business 20 years, so in a way, I've earned the right.
Fair enough. So speaking of coaching, I don't remember if it was a podcast or a blog post, but you were sharing about you're pretty passionate about people hiring coaches. Can you go into why?
I truly believe that in order to get to where we want to go in the most efficient way possible, we need somebody who's been there, done that. For example, with the marathon I'm training for, I could do this on my own. I have probably 20 or 30 books on the subject matter of power walking in marathons, how to eat for marathons, how to sleep for marathons. I have everything you can think of. Well, there's only so far that I can take myself because if I try to do it myself, I have limited vision. By going to somebody else who has been there, done that, who knows the ins and outs of marathoning, I'm going to get to my end result faster, more efficiently, and with less risk of injury. And it's the same in business. You want to find people that, one, that you respect, two, that you're willing to listen to them. There's nothing worse than a coach being hired by somebody and then the person pushes back the whole way. It's like, why did you hire a coach in the first place? Or they're looking for a coach to be a yes person. That's not what a coach is about. But find people who have been successful at something and go to them and see what they have to offer and if there's a congruent feeling of if you resonate with what they're doing. Because like the coach that I had, people either love her or they hate her. It's really, there's no in between, and she knows that. She said, I'm here to polarize people. You're either going to be a raving fan or you're not going to want to have anything to do with me. And she goes, that's okay because I only want the people that are going to really benefit from what I have to offer. So the reason I believe in coaches so much is they can help us to get out of our head. They can help us to walk through our fear. They can lift us up when we may not believe in ourselves. And they can also help us to map things out to get a better result than if we didn't invest in them. And it's really interesting, Rachel, because a lot of people, I hear a lot of coaches say, people just aren't investing in my services and I can't sell to save my life and on and on and on. And I'll ask them, I'll say, well, how much have you invested in your development? And they say, well, I really can't afford to. And it's like, wow, talk about energy serving you at the highest level. If you repeat that and you say, I can't afford to hire a coach, why in the world would anybody hire you?
Good point. Really good point. I guess I want to make this kind of tangible for people listening. I'd love to know what an average day looks like for you. And let's start with your hour of power. What does that look like for you?
Oh, wow. What a great question. Okay, well, first of all, how my day starts, the very first thing is I get greeted by 3 amazing dogs. And 2 of them are rescues. One's a pit bull, one's a Shih Tzu, who we didn't even know what she was when she came to us, and she needed a lot of medical attention. So I start by getting greeted by these animals, and then I go out and feed the horses, and I feed the dogs, and then I go on my power walk, and it may be anywhere from a half hour to a couple of hours in the morning. Then when I get to my office, I have the first hour of my day, I use it to monetize my business. I'm really clear on the fact that if I go into social media right away, if I look at emails and just start playing around in my inbox, I'm not going to get very much done. So I have that first period in my day where it's used to monetize my business. And I'm pretty structured in my day. Like today I have a checklist of things that I absolutely have to get done because of commitments I've made. Now, with some of what I have to get done, I outsource it and I delegate it to my virtual assistants. I have 5 people that I have on my team that each have their own expertise. So part of what's on my list may not be me actually doing the work, but I have to make sure I get the information to the team member who will be the one to actually do the time-consuming work on it. I usually start in my office at 10 in the morning. I am usually done by 4 in the afternoon, and I take a lunch hour. I've got it pretty well set up where I have invested in the right resources to give myself the lifestyle that I want. I had somebody recently who said, I don't want to pay all that money for a team. And I said, what's the lifestyle you want? You have to think in terms of what will other people do to free up your time so you can do the things you most enjoy.
Absolutely. And even to add on to that, I used to have a team with 120 different people. I've since sold the company, but one of the biggest learning lessons that I got from that was it's not about looking at the risk of how much you're going to lose, but if you go into it with the mindset of how can I earn back the return on investment with everybody I hire, it's a completely different story.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Good point.
Thank you. So your hour of power, you do something that is going to monetize your business. Now, how do you know what the best thing to focus on during that hour is?
It all ties into my long-term goals. For example, I have a big 3-day event I do in the fall of each year. I do it in Portland, Oregon, and everything I do is driving towards that 3-day event. So I have it all mapped out. I have 2 big whiteboards in my office. I have a flip chart, and I have a lot of arrows and boxes and lines that all lead to the end result. So everything I do is a breakdown of what's the next indicated step to get me closer to what I need to do. For example, in my work today, I have 2 presentations that I'm doing over the next couple of weeks. I need to get the PowerPoints done for that. Now, as far as the content for the PowerPoints, I'm the one who puts it together because I know what I want to say. I know what I want to train. As far as cleaning them up, well, that would be a team member who would do something like that. With opt-in pages or sales pages, if I'm going to be selling something after one of those events, well, then I need to have the sales page ready to go. I need to have the thank you page ready to go. And I'll put the general information, and then I have a team member who handles the details of it and make sure it looks good, make sure it's running, they tested it, all of that kind of stuff.
Beautiful. So you just reverse engineering in the long-term plan. I love it.
You said it in a nutshell. What I took about 5 minutes to explain. There you go.
I'm glad you went through that. I think it's really helpful. Another thing that you mentioned on your podcast, you said there's a difference between study time and monetize time. Can you share about that too?
A lot of times people, they think that they're being productive in their business and they're monetizing their business by studying or getting a training class or being on a coaching call with their mentor, when that is not what you're doing to monetize. You're gathering the information. Monetizing means that you're actually picking up the phone and calling people to have that sales conversation. Or you're going out and you're doing a speaking engagement and you're making an offer while you're presenting. Monetizing might be that you're creating that next product that's going to generate a few hundred or a few thousand or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars for your business. So it's really being clear on when are you bringing in the information and when does the information need to go out? And so going through and organizing your desk drawer is not monetizing your business. Going through and looking at how much you're loved on Facebook is not monetizing your business. Actually doing something that will give you a direct result of dollars in the bank.
That's awesome. I've heard of some people doing, like, making sure they have a action to study ratio of like 4-to-1 or something. For every 4 hours you're taking action, it's 1 hour with the study. It could be the same with organizing and the social media and all that other stuff. Awesome.
That's interesting.
Yeah, Jason Fabian was the one who I first heard that from. Do you know him?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, he put out a product like 2008 or something. I remember I bought, and he introduced that, and since then it just stuck with me. So I have 2 other kind of random questions that didn't fit in the conversation, but I just thought they were interesting things that you said that I wanted to explore a little bit. One thing was, you kind of quickly mentioned in your podcast something that I think is just, oh man, so many more people need to talk about it, but they don't, which is that you need to make sacrifices to have a successful business. And especially in, I guess, the women's entrepreneur market more than, because I kind of like dabble in both, the women-y and then the one where it's more like super hard internet marketing dudes. And especially for the women, it's a lot of this, like, if you dream that you can have this business, so it shall be. And so I was really refreshed to hear you talk about how you do need to make some sacrifices. Can you talk about that?
Absolutely. Okay, for example, today it's a beautiful day. It's going to be close to 70 degrees, and we get a lot of rain in my area. And this morning when I was doing my power walk, it was like 33 or 34 degrees, and I'm looking outside at a beautiful day, and yet I have to get certain things done. The sacrifice that I'm making right now is not going out and playing hooky and playing with the animals. I have certain responsibilities. We've really been misled to believe this whole thing around law of attraction, which I'm a firm believer in law of attraction. Whatever is in your life, you've attracted. And yet, many people have this belief that all you have to do is affirm what you want and somehow it's just going to drop in your lap. You know, I look at the office space that I have, I look at the vehicle I drive, I look at the home I live in, and all of that I've had to make sacrifices for in order to have the end result. And it's not just about the material stuff that I have, but that's the evidence of how hard I've worked. And working hard doesn't mean that it has to be a drudgery or a misery, but there are certain things that we have to be willing to do. If somebody wants to lose 30 pounds and they're eating a box of donuts every night, they may have to sacrifice that box of donuts to help implement their weight loss. And so in your business, there are certain things that you will have to be willing to give up in order to make your business a success. If you watch TV 3 hours a night and there's a program that you could put your time into instead of the 3 hours on TV, give up the TV. That's a sacrifice, but it's part of your overall plan.
Do you think that in the beginning when you're creating a business that you can have a business full of ease?
You know, I can't speak from personal experience because early on I was working literally 16, 18-hour days because I wasn't smart enough to hire a mentor early on. Very early in my business, I got a contract with a seminar company, and so I was traveling around the United States speaking for this seminar company, and that was paying the bills. And then when I would come home on weekends, and maybe I'd have 1 week off during the month, I was putting that time into building my local market. So I can't speak from personal experience, but I would say the things that would make it easier would be to hire a mentor, to get the right training, to treat your business like a business early on, and don't be so afraid of making the investments that will give you the information you need to get to where you want to get faster.
Those are some good points. Yeah, personally, I don't really think, not to have limiting beliefs, but I think it's pretty hard when you're first starting a business.
Well, you know, also it's being realistic because I was talking with a woman who came in for a VIP day and she was struggling to make $100,000 in her business. She was doing it, but it was a real struggle. And I said, so what's one of your goals over the next 12 months? She goes, I want to have a $3.5 million business. And I said, well, we should probably end this discussion right now because I don't think that that's feasible. I really don't believe that that's realistic. You don't have your infrastructure in place, and it would be better for you to set a goal that would be in alignment with getting your business in order to be able to double your revenue instead of 35 times your revenue. And, so sometimes we have to have people who give us a reality check, and it's not naysayers. It's people who say, look, let's really look at what you're asking for here. And if somebody has not been able to get the foundation in their business in place, that's one of the first things that I always work with clients on. It's like you really have to have a rock solid foundation.
Absolutely. Great points. And the other kind of random question that just intrigued me was, you mentioned on your blog that speaking for free is going to make you a lot more money than getting paid to speak. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. Now, this is all part of the foundation. If you just go out and speak for free and you make no kind of offer or you have no follow-up plan, you have spoken for free and you're probably not going to make any money. But if you have information products, if you have services, if you have something that you can offer either on the platform, if it's the right environment and you've had enough time to build rapport with the audience, then you can make the offer. If you can't make an offer because maybe the meeting planner won't let you, then you can actually do follow-up by having a drawing. I'll give you a great example. Just recently, I sponsored an event in Portland, Oregon, and I was a vendor. I had a vendor table. And I had 1 minute on the platform to talk about what I was contributing to the raffle drawing. And in that 1 minute, I was so tight in my message that after I had a lot of women who came up and said, "Can I talk to you about your services?" All I needed was a minute to let them know of what I had to offer. I actually polarized the audience. I said, this isn't for everybody, but it's for this kind of a woman, this kind of an entrepreneur. So in a very short period of time, I came away with a lot of leads. Now, after the event, if I just sat on the leads and did nothing, then I've wasted my time. There's a follow-up process that goes with it. I've actually hosted my own events where I've made as much as, in the last few months I had 2 small, and I'm talking very small mastermind groups, where I generated over $100,000 from 2 small mastermind groups. Prior to that, I had an event where I had people put down a refundable deposit, which meant they didn't pay to go as long as they showed up. If they didn't show up, I kept their deposit. And with one event, I generated $200,000.
Wow.
And so that was a free speaking engagement, generated $200,000.
That's amazing.
But I had a plan. See, that's the thing, Rachel, that I really want people to understand. When you hear all these numbers that a lot of us talk about, one, we have put a foundation in place. We've taken risks that other people wouldn't take. To put on the event, there is an investment that goes into it. You have to know how to market. And yet you really have to believe enough in what you're doing to have a product or service that you're making available to people. And if nothing else, that would be one of the first things I would invite people to look at is, do you have some way for people to buy your products or your services?
Great point. Do you happen to remember, I'm just so curious, what you said in that minute?
Here, I'll tell you what I said. There was a panel, right before I came on, there was an authors panel. And there were 3 authors that were on the platform, and all 3 of them said, writing books is not about making money. We don't do it to make money. And I thought, wow. And I was sitting on my hands thinking, oh my gosh, I write books to make money. I want to put my message out there, but I also write books to make money. And so when I got up, I said, okay, what I'm giving away is my book, Power Up for Profits, The Smart Woman's Guide to Online Marketing, and my book, Law of Achievement. And I said, now, I want you to know that the book Power Up for Profits is about making money. In this book, you will learn how to market in a way to make money. And I'm in the business of making money. And this book alone has already generated between $250,000 and $500,000 in direct and indirect sales. So I'm about making money, and if you're somebody who wants to make money, then you're in the right place at the right time if you're chosen for this particular book. Boom. That was it.
Oh, drop the mic.
I gave social proof of something that right before me, these other people, which, God bless them. That's, if that's what their whole deal is, that's great. They gave a great panel. They gave great information. But I teach people how to make money so they can do more of what they're here to do. I am not in business not to make money.
Love it. And I love how unapologetic you are about it. Awesome. Well,
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Kathleen, this has been great. I feel like we've covered so much ground from just the habits and the bigger picture and the gratitude, but also practical, tangible, how you run your business. And I just love how direct you are and practical. So thank you so much for your time. And I would love if you could let people know where they can go to find more about you.
Well, thank you, Rachel. They can go to my website, powerupforprofits.com. That's powerupforprofits.com. And on there, I've got contact information. I've got some nice gifts that'll help you to learn how to build your business. So thank you for that, Rachel.
Absolutely. Thank you again.
My pleasure. I've had a great time.
Thank you so much for listening to A Better Life. You can find all show notes for this episode at rachelrofay.com. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe so you can automatically get access to all new shows. Let's also connect. Just go onto Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram /RachelRofay, and we can talk there. The opinions of all guests here are their own, and I'm not necessarily endorsing any of them. I do want to give you perspective, though. And always remember, if you have a choice, choose a better life.